Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. My name's Heather Relation. I'm the membership concierge for the New York State Dental Association. We're so happy to have you guys join us tonight. We're going to be going over some topics, including finding and choosing a job, job interviews, contracts and negotiations, compensation, benefits, and insurance, and transitioning from residency to practice, professional growth and clinical development, licensing and credentialing, and public health research and organized dentistry. We're going to kind of try to keep it as broad as possible. We're going to answer the questions that you guys submitted. And the goal is for you to leave today, leaving this discussion feeling less anxious and more prepared for life after residency. The panelists and I are here for you throughout your career, and we're more than happy to answer any questions that you have. So I just want to, without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists. We have Dr. Evan Conley. He's the chair of the New Dentist Committee. Dr. Katie Rothfuss, she's the New Dentist representative on the NYSDA Board of Trustees and a New Dentist Committee representative. Dr. Sarah Kahn will be joining us soon, also a New Dentist representative. Dr. Jake Graka, also a New Dentist representative, and Dr. Lauren Heisinger, who's on our New Dentist Committee on the ADA level. Again, my name is Heather. I'm the membership concierge. So I just want to quickly, very quickly and very briefly, just share with you guys what you gain from NYSDA membership. I just want to have you understand what you gain and what you can walk away with today as a resident member. I just want to share that we are being sponsored by MILMIC tonight. We are a tripartite with the ADA. It's a membership association through the ADA, NYSDA, and your local district. Just so you understand the structure, advocacy is a huge part of our membership. We want to ensure that you have a seat at the table and have a say in your profession. You invested a lot of time and money and energy into becoming a dentist, so this is how you ensure that your profession stays in the direction that you want it to go. You have the opportunity to be a leader of your generation, just like the panelists today. So reach out to them or reach out to me if you want to become a leader, or just reach out to them. If you don't want to be a leader, you can at least still know who to get in touch with if you want to, have any say in how things go for you in your profession. We offer discounted CE and events through your local dental society and CE Navigator to help you track your CE for your license renewal. We can go over that at a later time, but I just want to make you aware that that exists. It's a great tool and it's free in your membership. We have legal resources. A huge one that I want you to take away with today is that you have the legal services panel. They give a free consultation and 10% discount off your legal services. So we want to ensure that you take advantage of that. That will help you out with employment contract analysis, purchasing a practice, entity creation, and much more. So great resource, and patient complaints happen all the time. We have peer review to help you through that. I'm happy to go over that a little bit more if we want to do a one-on-one session so you understand what that's about. We have financial resources. So some of the questions I know we're addressing financial concerns. So we have financial services through All One, the ADA Credit Union, and student loan refinancing was another question that came up. We have that through KeyBank. And then we have exclusive member benefits. So MILMIC is our sponsor tonight. They offer a new dentist for $50 first year out policy for malpractice insurance, and NYSDA will reimburse you that $50. So take advantage of that. That is a $0 payment for malpractice insurance. Our panelists can tell you it doesn't cost that when you get further into your career. So take advantage of that while you can. And hopefully you have little to no pre-existing conditions. ADA life and disability insurance member rates. Get some policies right now, especially if you're going to be moving around to different practices or different modalities as you're going through your early career. Definitely get your own disability insurance and life insurance so that stays with you no matter where you go. We have mental health and wellness resources and discount practice support resources for those of you. I know most of you said that you're going to associateship. If you just do decide to open up a practice, reach out to me. I will help you save money. And what we actually have a new dentist survival guide with tip sheets, webinars, links to other resources. So take advantage of that. Know it exists and it's put on by your new dentist committee. We're constantly updating that as a group. And the ADA actually just launched this today. I got notification that they have a new early career landing page on their website. So go ahead and scan that if you want to get some more dedicated resources for early career dentists. And you can always book a one-on-one session with me. I'm more than willing to talk to you guys about what you have available to you, no matter what stage of your career. Follow us on social media. It's a great way to stay involved, and you'll get the most information quickly. And that's my presentation. I want to turn it over to the panel.
All right. So we can start rolling with some of our topics that we already have on hand. So one of the initial topics that we had was finding and choosing a job, which there's many different ways that you can go about finding and choosing a job. And I think each and every one of us panelists have kind of gone about it a little bit differently. I would say my path's a little bit different because I did go pretty much right into ownership. So we will definitely touch on that. But if some of our other panelists want to talk about their first job experiences or
Jake, did you want to talk about your experience and your kind of first, because you've gone to different.
Sure. Yeah, so I was just making some notes here. So hi, I'm Jake Rock. I'm an associate right now in Buffalo, New York area. So I did residency. I did residency in California. So I actually got my initial licensure out there. So right after residency, what I would say, looking for a job, it's good to talk with residency director and attendings, see if they have any contacts in the area. My case was what it came to was looking at a lot of job boards online. So whether it was Indeed, there's Dental Post, there's some great Facebook groups like Dental Practice Matchmaker, or I know Dental Nachos has a match program like Dental Job Connect or something like that. So there's different ones like that where you can find postings. There's also opportunities for temping. So you can look for some of those in your community and see an office. So I tried out in a couple different offices, tried for a couple days and figured, see if it was a good fit or not. But exploring opportunities that way. And then, it's good to reach out, talk, visit in person. New York State, things typically go pretty straightforward. California, they have a lot of working interviews out there. So that was an interesting experience because you're put into a seat right away and have to practice dentistry without ever knowing the staff or the office. But typically in New York State, things are a little bit more structured, that you'll have a formal interview and typically be able to meet around the office and most often be signed on before you would start doing any sort of dentistry in the chair. But I think those are some good resources to look for an initial job. As far as what to look for, there's all different types of practices. So I think for your first job, just go in with the mindset that it's not going to be your forever job. So find something that's going to be good, the people are good, the support's good, that's not too far from home, have a convenient commute. You don't want to be killing yourself with an hour-long commute back and forth. Ideally some form of mentorship sponsor, whether that's a CE stipend or some practices may do like a Saturday a month where there's guided cases, but something where there's some formal mentorship to help you get on your feet and get acclimated to private practice, which can be a much quicker pace than a residency program is.
Now, Jake, I just have a question for you that maybe some of our audience might find interesting. Now, did you take ADEX in dental school then, knowing you were going to California and wanted to potentially practice out of state, or what was it like obtaining a license in another state versus New York State?
Yeah, so I did not take ADEX, so I just did a PGY1. I had pretty much decided during dental school that states I was interested in receiving initial licensure in would be either New York, California, or Colorado. And those were 3 states that had PGY1 already as a pathway to licensure, so I didn't take ADEX. But since that was a direct pathway in California, was able to use that. Getting licensed takes a long time, so budget for that while you're in residency, save up some funds. In California, it took me about, until October, so June 30th till October, I think 13th. So what's that? 3.5, 4 months. And I think New York State, maybe you can apply a little bit before the end of residency, but still you're looking at around 3 months during that peak season of licensure applications. So definitely budget to have some savings to buffer for a little bit after residency. But as far as getting initial licensure in California, and then applying again for initial licensure in New York. Process was pretty similar. New York, it's most straightforward because PGY1's our only pathway. California, they had an additional law and ethics exam as well. So for the other states that accept PGY1, I'm not exactly sure. It varies so much state by state. So the ADA has a great licensure map to really get all of the specifics per state.
Yeah. And I would say too with licensure, because I took the CDC or the ADEX, but didn't pass it. And so there's a lot of states out there that while they have reciprocity, when you read the reciprocity rules, it still says that you have to pass a regional licensure exam. So definitely, be mindful of that if you anticipate that you may be leaving the state of New York at some point in your future. It may complicate things if you did not take a licensure exam. So just keep that in mind. Because for example, I was looking to relocate to like the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and all of them required that reciprocity required a regional licensure exam, and I couldn't even get a license to be a hygiene or a dental school faculty member without it. So just some things to keep in mind. There's a lot of nuance when it comes to licensure portability, which is why it's been a topic that the ADA has been advocating for so long, because it can complicate things. Because sometimes, you have a spouse that has to relocate for your job, and it seems to be straightforward, but then all of a sudden for you to practice dentistry, it becomes complicated. You got to go back to dental school essentially to take a license exam. So certainly something to just, be mindful of. It also I would say, with applying your New York license, you all could start that process today. You're within that range that you're almost done. You could go on to the New York State Board of Education, SED, State Board of Ed, and fill out your paperwork that you have to do, pay the fee. You also have to request your transcripts from your dental school, which sometimes can take some time for them to turn it around. So if you get all your ducks in a row, your application will sit in the queue. And then as soon as your residency director submits your residency paperwork, they'll start the process and process your license. So it kind of helps get you ahead of the curve a little bit and further up on the pile, so you don't have to wait the 3, 4, 5 months sometimes that it's taken historically, because it's still very much an analog system for processing. So definitely a good thing to keep in mind. Let's see. What about you guys? Things that you like, what would look for when deciding on a practice? What kind of characteristics do you think are important to assess when evaluating an office and fit?
Well, I mean, I can touch on this. A couple different things to look at. So again, location's important. The physical space is something you have to go to every day, so make sure you're comfortable with it. When you go to check out an office, look at the practice management software. Number one, make sure it's something you're comfortable working with. Check out the technology they have available. Are they using digital radiographs? Do they have a cone beam CT? Are they using intraoral scanners, or is it still traditional PVS impressions? Look at the schedule. How far booked out are they? Do they actually need an associate? Are you going to have a full schedule? Look at the number of hygienists they have available. If there's 4 associates and 2 hygienists, that's probably not going to work to keep your schedule full. So making sure there's enough space patient-wise to fill up your schedule as an associate, as well as physical space. Do you have the availability of at least 2 operatories to work out of? So looking at these sort of things, seeing the team that's present there, as I touched on earlier, do they have opportunities for CE or mentorship within the practice?
Absolutely. And I think team is important to kind of like ask when you're out of practice and you're visiting for an interview, asking staff like how long they've been there, like hygienists, dental assistants, front desk workers. If most people have only been there like a year or 6 months or whatever, it might be an indication that if it's not a new practice, if it's an established practice, it might be an indication that there's higher turnover rates. And then that kind of is a red flag. Well, why are people leaving? So things to look out for, or to make sure that you actually have an assistant. and what is that ratio? Is it a 2 dental assistants to 1 dentist? Is it a 1-to-1 ratio? What happens when a dental assistant calls out? Are you still expected to see patients, or do they have to move schedules around? I'll say in my practice as a federally qualified health center, there is no shortage of patients. So you will not have to worry about not being busy. You might have no shows, but we definitely don't have a shortage of people trying to get in the door to seek care. But also, looking at like how are you paid? So as for me as a dentist at a federally qualified health center, I have a guaranteed salary. I go 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and I get a guaranteed salary, and that I know I'm going to take home at the every 2 weeks. Whereas other offices might do it based on collections, or they might be doing it based on production. So those are things to keep in mind. And also, are there productivity expectations? At an FQHC, we have an expectation of like, we have a goal target, like we're trying to see, 10 patients a day. On my schedule, we schedule like 13, because we have, based on our no-show rates, we're gonna like, 2 to 3 people will not show. So we have a buffer to meet that 10. But if I fall below and I only see 3 patients, I'm not getting punished for it in any sort of way. Whereas other practices might be, expecting that you're hitting a certain, revenue target every month or so. So those are things to be mindful of. I know, especially as a new dentist, even with residency, you may still, when you're first out by yourself, and your speed may still not be quite, what you would like it to be, or there's going to be times where you look at a radiograph and you're like, oh yeah, I can take this tooth out, no problem. And then all of a sudden you get in and you're like, oh, actually this bone's a lot denser than I thought. Now I'm trying to cut, or like, oh, the patient's not getting numb. And things like that. And so, being mindful and knowing yourself and what you're comfortable with, I think is really important. Also, too, if what's the expectation from the office about, referring things out? Some practices are like gonna try and push your limits, and others will be, it's your license, you work within your scope. I mean, if you feel like you need to refer that, then that's fine. That's what you do. So those are things to be mindful of as well, I think. Lauren, any insight from you?
I just want to add, like, the situation that you're joining is something to be aware of. So, for example, I joined a practice where an associate was leaving. Her schedule was booked out 6 months. I didn't have to build my schedule, it was already there. New associates joining our practice as we're growing, their schedule is later because we're adding a doctor. So, something to definitely be cognizant of when you're trying to join a practice. What's the situation? What's your schedule going to be? Are you responsible for, growing your patient base, or are those patients provided for you, going forward? So
Awesome.
Something else that I would add, as an attending who speaks to a lot of residents about their first jobs, and as they start looking, find some trusted people in the area that you're practicing in, either some mentors, maybe some former dental school colleagues or upperclassmen, or use your dental society. If you're in New York, look out to the local district and talk to member dentists about the practice that you're going to be working at. Dentistry is a small community, and we don't ever like to speak bad upon our colleagues or anything like that. But a lot of times we have colleagues or other providers in the region who are aware of other offices. Maybe they worked there for a period of time, or they know someone who did, to give you, an honest opinion as an outsider, as a third party. Because a lot of times a interview and a practice tour can be a very different than, even when you get that first employment agreement. Sometimes there's red flags in there, or what are provisions that maybe you don't want to get into. And then, what are things like actually, once you're credentialed, once you're fully on board and you hit the ground running. A lot of practices will start you off slow, especially if you're younger in your career, but all of a sudden the expectation can greatly change, and there's provisions within that. So those are things, just to be cognizant of, and sometimes it's uncomfortable to ask certain questions in the interview because you feel like, you want to interview them just as much as they're interviewing you. But we all have our reservations because we don't want to seem like a needy future employee. But there's a lot of information that's very pertinent that you want to know. So there are different avenues, and a lot of times don't hesitate to reach out to colleagues or anyone that you might have contact with in the area. And I think the dental society and the dental associations are a great connection because a lot of times the member dentists know of other members and other non-members as well, if the practice, group maybe isn't affiliated.
Absolutely. I think too, it's great to find mentors or just colleagues through the dental society too. I know I met an endodontist in the area going to like a women in dentistry event. And now when I see cases, I'll send it to her and I'm like, do you think this is like needs a retreat or like what's going on here? Or like I did a fill and I'm like, I'm not like totally thrilled about it. Like, what are your thoughts on it? Like she'll, I can text her a picture and she'll text me back within, 10 to 15 minutes and stuff like that. So they're always really great connections to have um, by just, reaching out to people and utilizing your membership. I mean, that's what you're paying for, is that community that organized dentistry provides. So don't be shy to use it. Um, Going along that, how do you guys think, like, what is a great strategy for like building confidence after residency?
I would say taking post-op x-rays, having a mentorship ability at your practice where you can go over cases, especially when you're fresh out of residency. There are things that you are not going to have experienced once you start private practice. So it's important to have people that you can rely on to give you feedback.
I mean, I would say if you have the ability to start at least with a mentor dentist or in a group practice type setting where there's a couple other practicing doctors around you as well to be able to bounce ideas off, there can be a lot of value in that, or at least connection to some mentors to give you some feedback. And starting with the fundamentals. I mean, if you've never placed an implant during residency, don't try to place an implant your first week during private practice just because the patient's willing to go for it. Stick with what you know. Build confidence and speed there. But never compromise your work. Start with one column. Don't try to balance, so many patients that it would ever have any effect on the care you're able to provide for your patients. So starting with manageable blocks in the schedule. Maybe if it's a new office and you've never used this intraoral scanner before, maybe block off 2 hours for the crown prep to give yourself some buffer time, just so you're able to go through all of the motions and get comfortable with it. And over time, you'll get comfortable and you'll be able to pick up speed and, reduce the time of appointments, but start slow and get comfortable first.
Absolutely. I think that's all great advice. I think too, with regards to technology, if you're going to an office and you're not familiar with it, most of the times, all those products have reps. And they also have websites. So a lot of the websites have some really great how-to videos, or they do CE online, or you can, call the rep or vendor that product is from and ask them to like, hey, like I'm new to the practice. I've never used this device. Can we schedule a one-on-one for me to, for you to kind of go over it with me, or hopefully someone, or someone in the office might be like a super user for something and you can get some training that way. And I think for me, one of the biggest, kind of adjustments was having to manage my own patients, but then also have to fit in hygiene. And that was a, at least in my residency program, like we saw our own hygiene patients. So you didn't have that kind of balancing act of figuring out like, when can you pause in your procedure that you're doing with a patient and then go do a hygiene check. So I think that's definitely, another reason why going, slow or making your blocks of appointments a little longer to begin with, is so important because you have that it's a new dynamic to learn. And I know initially for me, there were patients who were waiting like 45 minutes, an hour, and they're like, Dr. Roth is like, this patient's been waiting, and I'm like, I don't. So like, now I'm like, okay, I can prep this tooth for like a filling and then go do this, have them bite on gauze and go do the check for hygiene and then come back. Or other things, or you get your patient numb and then you go over there, and you do your hygiene check, and maybe you're doing a denture adjustment, and then you can, but that learning that dynamic, and learning also what you can delegate to your dental assistant. It takes some practicing as well. So I think those are all things. Also, I know for me personally, when I graduated, I, decided, definitely focused on like the basics, bread and butter, getting comfortable with that. But then, trying to pick out, okay, what skill do I want to develop and work on this year? And that's what I focused and targeted my CE. So I looked at, like Greater New York Dental Meeting and like what hands-on CE are related to this skill. And looked at other resources, there's Spear Education, the Academy of General Dentistry. There's so many different places to get CE these days. The Dental Society, some of them do, courses, what do you want to do a hands-on workshop on and invest in it? Those are things I think, will also help build confidence with cases. Because I hate sometimes people are like, oh, well, you just do more cases. I'm like, but that's a patient. Like if I screw that up, like that's a patient that now has to like live with my, trying to be better or experiment. So there's, finding ways to, that's where also, having a mentor, like if you are going to do something that maybe, you're going to do a premolar endo that you're like, not, looks straightforward. You think you could do it, but like, if you have another dentist in the office that can back you up and help you if you get stuck, is so, so crucial, I think, when trying to get more confidence in things.
I would say something that, became important to me, especially, so I purchased a solo practitioner's office, and I don't think I would have been able to do that if I hadn't, felt like I had good mentors around me that I could bounce ideas off of. If you get stuck in a situation, you want to have those people that you can reach out to, whether they're former faculty, colleagues in the area. So that's important, but also just, reflecting and recognizing the fact that, you are responsible for your patients and your treatment. And that means, owning your mistakes, and your successes. So, for every great social media post and, I feel like a lot of times we see our colleagues and it looks like everyone's doing so wonderful, but, we all are showing our best cases. We're all showing our clinical successes. Everyone has those clinical failures, and I think what sets us apart, in growing in our career is a lot of evaluation of where things went wrong, what could go better. Even after a great day, with patients, you want to look at, your work. So whether it's, looking back at x-rays, of your previous work, or just reevaluating things each and every procedure, every time you see a patient, check on some work you did a couple weeks ago or a few months ago. Those are the things that, if things don't look good, tell the patient, hey, you know what? I don't like the looks of that. Let's fix it. Let's make it right. And evaluate why it didn't go well or where you can improve. It'll be a long career for all of us if we just keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. And that's what, we always need to be growing, and being able to take a step back if things aren't going well or going right, and saying, you know what, let's redo this, or let's close it up and, do a little bit of homework on our own and figure out, where can we improve, or do we need to get this to a specialist, or, you definitely, if you're still in training or you're in residency, or, you're in a practice setting with excellent mentorship, find the edges of your comfort zone, but do so, under that knowledge that you do have someone to back you up. If you are out there on your own, you might want to be a little bit more cautious as to how far you're going with things until you take the necessary CE or you have someone there to back you up.
Yeah, another great thing that this just brought to my mind is reach out to your dental society, because they may be aware of like local study clubs. That was something that really helped me when I moved to a new area. I joined the study club, and there's all specialists that we refer to and see mutual patients. Half of our study club lectures throughout the year are just case presentations and discussions. So it really gives you local dentists that you actually work with to go over cases with, and specialists, basically free consults. So I think that's important.
Get to know the specialist wherever you end up. If it's not an area you're familiar with, go to meetings, go to CE courses, especially if it's a local specialist. Sometimes the local labs will host events, or, you know, I found that getting to know specialists, you know, obviously they want your referrals, you know, so they're, you know, that might be a component as to why they take on a new dentist that they want to, you know, start talking to. But I've learned so much from working with them and just bouncing cases and ideas. And all of them are very welcoming, and understand that, you know, they want a good relationship with you. So don't feel, you know, guilty asking an oral surgeon about, you know, extractions. They know you're going to be doing extractions. You don't have to, you know, feel sheepish about saying, hey, you know, if I was doing a case like this, you know, how would you handle this situation? Or, you know, because those are the people you know, hopefully you never have to call on them in an emergency situation, but it's nice to have that relationship in case you ever did need that.
Yeah, that what I was going to say before, and I'm glad I waited because it kind of what I have to say kind of touches on everything that everybody just said is, you know, I come obviously from the dental association side of things, and everything that our members here just said have some type of touch point back to the association. So, you know, having that camaraderie with the association, they're all members, they all know each other. They don't live in the same area. Sans two of them on the panel here. They don't live in the same area. They're all across the state. This is not just from one space here. They all can call upon each other, especially if you're a general dentist, and then if you're a specialist, you know, you could be a member of your specialty association, but for the advocacy for your profession, it's really through the association, through NYSDA and the ADA. But also, we have plenty of general dentists who will not refer out to non-member specialists because we, as a member, you're agreeing to the code of ethics and the principles of excellence. So to have that, just know that we have members, general dentists that will, you know, because this is their association as well, they won't refer out. So it's something to keep in mind as well. And it's something I know a lot of our people here are general dentists or going into that. If you decide to go into a specialty, keep that in mind as well. Dr. Rothfuss had touched on continuing education. So we ensure and we try to ensure that our courses are compliant with New York State Education Department standards. And that's what CE Navigator will do. So don't just take a CE course if you're not sure that it is compliant towards your license. And also it will break it up into certain buckets. So if you're taking one for, say, you know, you're a practice owner, you want to take one for marketing for dentistry, that's great, but that's not going to count for your license. And it will break it up and tell you that. So that's a professional development. It won't count towards your clinical hours that you need. So all of the things that were just mentioned here, the camaraderie, the knowing who's around you. I like to say the dentist down the street is not your competitor, they're your colleague. You're going to want to go on vacation. You're going to want to, you know, have a family. You're going to need help, you know, various reasons. You're going to need to close for some time. Or just get your patients covered. Through the association is how you're going to maintain that community. And so that's just what I wanted to touch on based on everything that they just said there. So it all kind of ties back to your membership. And you're not working in a silo. You can find jobs. There's a lot of opportunity through just being a member. And I'm more than happy to speak with you. And I know our panelists are as well. I had put in the chat everybody's modality. It's just I put a call out to our new dentist committee and asked, are you, you know, who would be willing to be a panelist? And ironically, we have Dr. Lauren Heisinger as a DSO associate. Dr. Rothfuss is an FQHC director. Dr. Conley is a practice owner and attending. Dr. Kahn is a dental school faculty. And Dr. Graka is an associate seeking a practice ownership. So if any of you are in those arenas and have like burning questions for any one of those modalities, please put it in the chat. And one other thing I put in there, we did a do's and don'ts of associate employment contracts webinar just in January with a lawyer going through it. So this panel has their own insights and what they've been through or what they've heard, but if you want to hear it from a lawyer and see and get some tips, is very in depth and it's broken up by chapters. So you don't have to watch the entire thing. You can kind of just look at it. So I highly recommend taking a look at that as well. We've got about 15 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat, raise your hand, talk to us. Otherwise, we'll continue on with the discussion as it's been going. And we do have some canned questions that were submitted too. So please feel free to raise your hands. I'm going to stop talking and you guys can take over again.
Do you guys want to talk a little bit about like compensation? Because I feel like when you come out, you're not really sure, like, should I be paid on production, collections? Like, how does this matter? My only, guideline for finding and choosing a job is that you want to make sure that all of this is really clear in your contract. Again, collections is really easy to track, but it's not easy to track. Is your office actually collecting the money? Production is much easier as an associate to see like, what your numbers are, but that doesn't always translate to what your office is bringing in. So it is really tricky and offices can go either way. So that's something definitely to talk to either the practice manager or the owners about before you sign a contract.
So my thoughts are, so I've been compensated about every way possible. So I see we have some questions first about W-2 versus 1099. So I think that's an important discretion to make. So most often, if you're going to be a dental associate in New York State, you are going to be an employee. So you would have to be compensated W-2 to be within the legal regulations. Now, will some practice owners still try to pay you 1099? Yes, they'll try to find loopholes. I feel like it's definitely more common downstate just because there's so many practices and there's less regulation. So it's something to watch out for. Typically, 1099 should be reserved for independent contractors. That would be like a dental anesthesiologist that's bringing all of their equipment and going office to office. If you're an associate in the same office, 3+ days a week using their equipment, you should be compensated W-2. So that can be a red flag off the bat. As far as compensation goes, some places will offer a daily rate, daily minimum for your entire tenure, some for a certain period of time. If you're entering a practice, negotiate for at the bare minimum 6 months of a daily rate. As far as daily rates go, it's going to vary by location within the state. If you're in a more populated area where there's more competition, more likely than not, it might be a little bit lower because there's more dentists there. So if you're, in New York City, maybe it'll be around $650 to $700 a day. If you're in the Adirondacks, maybe it's closer to $1,200 a day because they're trying to recruit dentists to come up there. But at least 6 months, and if you can negotiate for a daily minimum perpetually, even better. As far as production collections go, as Lauren was referring to, production is a whole lot easier to keep track of. Pretty rare to be paid on true production. A lot of practices will pay on adjusted production, so taking into account what insurance or net production, taking into account what insurance is actually reimbursing, or if there are any adjustments for redos, or say you comped a case or something like that, you didn't actually produce because there was no money collected. Collections is tough to keep track of, especially in a practice that takes a lot of insurance because the payments typically are trailing, sometimes 60 to 90 days behind. So, you could have a wonderful week production wise and feel like you worked your butt off, but your paycheck might not show that for a couple of months down the line. In any event, in a case where you don't have a daily minimum, there can also be a lot of fluctuation, pay period to pay period, month to month, in your paycheck, which make it a little bit difficult to budget. So, it makes it more in line with being a practice owner. In a contract, other things to, look out for red flag wise, I would say restrictive covenants. Look out for that. Looking at, time off, what they're willing or not to give you. Is it paid time off, or is it just time off without pay if you are production or collections based? So yeah, that's some of my 2 cents there.
Do you guys want to go over like benefits? Because I think a lot of times when I'm talking with students and residents, they're always looking at the salary, like what is my, salary, but you're not really factoring in like the benefits package and the monetary value that goes along with that. So do people want to kind of highlight real quick, like what benefits do you get from where you practice?
I can touch on, I can give a perspective on kind of like the opposite, or,
As the owner?
As a practice owner, that was something that, obviously it was a consideration, but not major. You are responsible not only for your own benefits, but also potentially employee benefits, which is a lot to evaluate. So I do recommend, if you do have a accountant or a financial planner that you work with, as far as financial benefits, 401k or IRA, there are multiple different types of plans with that. As far as health insurance goes, I know at least in the 8th district, we are one of few districts that do have like a group rate health insurance plan for our members. So that is a nice benefit in our area. So if you don't have employee offered benefits, which you may not if you're only working part-time between offices, I know of a number of people who work maybe 2 or 3 days in one practice and a couple days in another practice. Or if you're self-employed, usually your options are either go in the New York State marketplace, which we are in as dentists, we're going to be in an income class where you do not qualify for any of like the subsidized plans. So you end up paying quite a bit for plans. So that is a factor to consider. But also that's where, if you have a local FQHC or state or teaching facility or anything like that, sometimes you can leverage that as a way or an avenue to get benefits, which is, another option for you. And that's also if you're in a practice that maybe you aren't at 40 hours a week, because, in New York, less than full time, your employer isn't required to offer you any sort of benefits, and a lot of times employers will use that to their advantage and offer you just shy of full-time hours to save on that. So just something to be cognizant of.
Yeah.
But
So
there are options to get those benefits, is
Yeah.
basically my summary.
And for me, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to work in a federally qualified health center. In addition to, we see patients, and I also get to go out into the community and do community events and education, and other, do dentistry in a different way. But benefits wise, it for me could not be beat. So I get, a biweekly, paycheck, but then I also get paid time off. I also get CME days. So separate from my PTO, I also get days every year to take CE courses. I also get either $1,200 or $1,500 a year to take CE courses, so I could use it to pay conference fee, hotel, airfare, that kind of thing, or do a bunch of different local workshops or things like that. I also get I get disability and life insurance. I get a 401k with a 4% match. I have loan repayment, both through the National Health Service Corps and Public Service Loan Forgiveness. And then I also, what else do I have? There's a lot of, they pay for my ADA membership, so I'm not paying for that. And then for malpractice, we're as an entity that gets funding from the federal government, we're covered under the Federal Tort Claim Act. So I also don't pay malpractice. So my paycheck, I'm actually taking it home with me, and it goes towards rent, it goes towards my utilities, and goes towards my car insurance, and the rest of it I get to pocket and put into savings because I'm not using my own money to pay my loans. I'm not using my own money for malpractice, disability, life insurance. or malpractice. Although I will say do have an ADA protective plan as well, because it was such a low rate, because I've been a member since dental school. And I was like, if I leave this job, then I have nothing. And then who knows what my health will be and what my rates would be if I left my job. So I do have both. But it's still like, I think like 20 or 25, $30 a month for the ADA protective plan. So that's that for me was my salary might be lower on paper, but I actually am money ahead in most cases. Lauren, how
Yeah,
about
and
you?
you
'Cause- yeah, so
You can negotiate these things in your contract. I was fortunate to work for a practice where they required that we were an ADA member, and therefore, in my contract, it's, reimbursed for malpractice, any dues, a CE stipend. So these are all things that are important as you're, growing in your career that maybe your practice can support. So it's worth, having a discussion with the ownership or the DSO that you're working for to see if these things can be included in your practice, in your contract.
And I
and don't
think,
be shy to negotiate.
Yes.
and going back to like the W-2 versus 1099, I mean, as a W-2 employee, you're entitled to benefits. If you were a 1099, classified as an independent contractor, then you're on your own. You don't get any benefits. You're paying for your own health insurance, your own malpractice insurance. You're paying the employer half of the FICA taxes. So even though, maybe there's some tax benefits if you set up an S corporation, I mean, I've done it. It's a lot of work. It didn't work out for me as an associate. You don't have enough business expenses. So try to stay W-2. It's just going to be easier for you as an associate. Something else that came to mind was when you are, say you're not in a salaried position, essentially your compensation relates to the work you're doing. And if you're in a heavy insurance practice, it can vary a lot based on the insurances accepted and the fee schedules present. So that being the case, if you're being compensated on production versus collections, if you're able to get an idea, what insurances are accepted, whether it's state-funded insurance, or get an idea of what the fee schedules are in the practice to help you in negotiating what your percentage of productions or collections is going to be. And, I would say if you're going to be compensated by collections, always negotiate for a higher percentage. I would say probably around 30% production. If you're being paid via collections, you probably want to get at least 35% collections, because now you're dependent on the practice collecting from all the patients, and you're also at the mercy of waiting until insurance kicks in. Final note would also be lab fees. Lab fees can really, really, really add up. Some practices will cover them completely. Sometimes might be all on you. Sometimes it's half of it, or sometimes it's a percentage that's equal to your compensation rate. Sometimes those are deducted after the percentage has been taken, or sometimes before. So there's all different calculations and really looking into that. But if you're doing a lot of crown and bridge and every unit's $80 to $95, that adds up quickly. If you're doing implant cases, those restorative components for OEM parts are extremely expensive. So things can add up quite a bit. And when you're already at negotiated insurance rates and then lab fees are taken off of that, it can really take a bite out of things. So really being aware when you're negotiating your contract. Also for clear aligner cases, sometimes the lab fees are exorbitant. So understanding what's present in your contract when you're agreeing to these things.
So we only have a few minutes left. I still don't see any questions dropped in the
just
chat.
wanted to quickly touch base about a completely different perspective. So
Yes,
I'm
sir.
probably the oldest new dentist here. This may be 10 years since I graduated dental school, and I was an associate in several practices, actually in several states, and now I'm full-time faculty at a dental school in New York at NYU. And I don't know, I loved being I loved being an associate in a practice, but after doing it for so long, I did find it fairly to be a little bit monotonous. So I wanted to try something different. In my last associate job, I had the opportunity to teach at a hygiene school in the evenings, and I really absolutely loved that. And that kind of changed my interest to go full-time as faculty. So just so you know that is an option as well. A lot of dental schools have part-time opportunities for faculty that are paid or volunteer. And as a full-time faculty, kind of like Katie was saying, I have pretty great benefits. I have a 401k, I get health insurance, matching. I don't think I've had to pay for a CE course in 3 years, because NYU has their own CE courses that I'm able to attend for free. And I love that I'm around dentists again. So it's kind of like dental school, because I found that being in a practice, especially when I was by myself as an associate, tended to be a little bit lonely. So just know that there are a lot of different options as a dentist. You don't have to stick to one. You can try one, go to another one, and there's lots of opportunities overall as a dentist.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I didn't really realize until leaving dental school, that so many times your professors will frame things like, when you own your own practice, and you kind of subliminally or brainwash is like, that is the definition of success, and if I don't do that, then I haven't been successful as a dentist. But if you know, every single one of us has taken a very different career pathway, and I would say all of us are successful in what we are doing, and we got to choose that path. So there's no one right way to practice dentistry or to have a career in dentistry. So, it really is up to you and knowing yourself and what you want to get out of the profession. And that, that can change as your body gets broken down, or, you start a family and you want to have something, or like for me, it's like, I think similar to Sarah, like getting to teach, because I teach, I'm with the global outreach team with NYU, and getting to, teach students and kind of mentor them and teach them things that, like, I wish someone had told me in dental school, and I could teach the next generation. Like, for me, that fills up my cup. So when the monotony of practice is wearing, and you're just like, oh, do I really want to do this? You do something like that. And it just kind of, re-energizes you. So I just want that as like, keep that in mind as you're starting your careers. Anyone else have any closing thoughts before we let everyone go? Pieces of advice?
There's just always support there. So, whenever things get stressful, just, fall back on your people, because we're all going through the same stuff.
Yeah, and I
I
will provide everybody after the fact with all the contact information, with the emails for the panelists here. So if you, and I'll put in the email as well what their modality is. So please, I mean, this is an opportunity to have a mentor, somebody that you met tonight. You have your attendings, you have your co-residents, but here's an opportunity for people who are within 10 years out, who have been through it. So take advantage of that. They're all active members and they're leaders in the organization. So you have a great opportunity to be able to speak with them. But I'll leave it to the panel. If any other things or any other questions, then we can go ahead and close it. But any final thoughts?
Just a plug for our new dentist committee. So if you want to be involved, we have positions on councils and committees throughout the state. Reach out to your local new dentist, your district, and we're happy to, facilitate you guys getting involved. Myself, I serve on an ADA council or a committee. Katie's our new dentist representative for the state. Evan's our chair for our new dentist committee, and everyone else is a member of our new dentist committee. So we're happy to
Or
help.
as a council representative too.
Yep. Yeah, so a lot of positions and, available leadership opportunities, but just make sure you reach out and get involved.
And
Yeah.
I would just say, I know we talked a lot about compensation and items like that, but just remember day to day, even if you are on the production or collection-based compensation, we're here to treat patients, and just stick to your ethics and, your teachings, and just treat every one of your patients just like it was your own mother, father, brother, sister, do what's right by them. And as long as you can justify, what you're saying to them and backing it up, it should never feel like you're a salesperson or anything like that. Just keep that in mind in your practice, and you won't have to worry about finances or things going wrong or your license.
That's really good advice. I just wanted to end it off by saying that dentistry is hard, and it takes a lot of mental toll, it takes a lot of physical toll. So spend time taking care of your mental health and your physical health. I see dental students all the time with terrible, terrible posture, and I correct them time and time again. So be mindful of your ergonomics, and make sure you're taking care of your mental health as well.
Jake, do you have any final nuggets of wisdom?
Nothing else that comes to mind right now.
Awesome. Well,
More to come.
yeah. I just want to thank everyone for coming out. I hope you learn some things. And again, like Heather said, I know there's some questions, like there was a couple that were about like federally qualified health centers. Like she's going to share our contact information. Please send us emails.
Yep,
Please
absolutely.
don't be shy. Like that's why we're here. That's why we're involved in organized dentistry, because we like that community. We want to help the next generation. So, enjoy the last month and a half of residency, learn as much as possible, push yourselves, and good luck and welcome to this great profession.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night, and we'll be in touch.
Thank
Good
you.
night, all.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And thank you to Milmick again for sponsoring us tonight.